The Galactic Council burst into mocking laughter as Counselor Mizar ridiculed humanity's reliance on primitive ballistic firearms. But the laughter died when the human guns fired and tore through the Council's impenetrable shields like they were made of paper. "Ballistic weapons have no place in a civilized galaxy," sneered Mizar, the purple-skinned Romulan representative. He gazed around the Grand Council chamber at his fellow delegates, the tentacled Zygons, the insectoid Formics, the aquatic Hydrons, and more. Alien races from 1,000 star systems, all nodding in agreement, all looking with derision upon the sole human in their midst. Thomas Bell, Earth's appointed ambassador, stood stone-faced before the council. He was a veteran soldier, not a politician, a man of action, not words. But Earth needed him here, needed him to prevent the Galactic Council from voting to ban all kinetic weapons. "Projectile weapons are a reliable means of defense," Thomas argued, his voice gruff. "They don't run out of power like energy weapons. They're simple but effective. Humanity won't give them up." The council erupted in jeers and scornful laughter. Thomas stood his ground, unflinching, as the laughter slowly died down. "If you don't believe our weapons are a threat, let me prove it," Thomas challenged. "Let me demonstrate what human guns can do. Set up your best shields and armor as targets. If I can't punch through them, I'll accept your ban." Mizar glanced at the other counselors who were now murmuring to each other in surprise. Humanity wanted to prove their guns against council defenses. What a folly. "Very well, human," Mizar said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "We will humor your little demonstration, but when your primitive lead slugs bounce harmlessly off our shields, you will accept the council's wisdom and surrender your guns." A pair of Formics scurried out to set up a target range. Drones flew over, erecting the hard light barrier shields and nanocarbon plate armor that council security forces used. Thomas hefted a large duffel bag onto the table before him and unzipped it. He reached in and withdrew an M41A pulse rifle, the same model used by the Space Marines. He slapped in a magazine, racked the charging handle, and took aim at the nearest target, 100 meters downrange. "Brace for the pellets," Mizar mocked. The other counselors grinned in anticipation, eager to see the human weapons prove useless. Thomas squeezed the trigger. The rifle roared and bucked against his shoulder. A burst of armor-piercing rounds screamed downrange and punched straight through the hard light shield to bury themselves deep in the nanocarbon plate. The plate shattered like glass. The council went deathly silent, staring in open-mouthed shock. That was impossible. No material weapon could penetrate their defenses. Thomas swiftly swapped to a sniper rifle, a heavy machine gun, a semi-auto grenade launcher. Each weapon rained fire on the targets, each round destroying shields and armor like they were nothing. The sound was deafening in the council chamber. As the last gun fell silent, Mizar found his voice. This is trickery," he shouted. "The human cheated." Other counselors voiced their agreement, but most continued to stare at the demolished targets in amazement and fear. Had they underestimated the humans? Even the weakest of council races didn't dare challenge them so boldly. Mizar stormed up to Thomas, pointing a long purple finger. "Weapons malfunction or not, it changes nothing. Humanity is still just a weak, primitive species. You exist in this galaxy by our sufferance. You will obey our decrees or be destroyed." Thomas stared back at the alien, brown eyes to yellow, unflinching and unafraid. When he spoke, his voice was low and calm, but carried the promise of violence. Humanity will never be disarmed. We will never be at the mercy of aliens like you again. Ban our guns, and we will fight to keep them. Today I showed you that your invincible defenses are nothing to us. Tomorrow, you'll find out what human resolve and human weaponry can really do. I dare you to try us. Thomas and Mizar locked glares as the council erupted into arguing around them. The other races had much to discuss and much to fear. Mizar silently vowed to put the humans in their place, while Thomas silently swore to fight for humanity's right to self-defense. There would be no turning back now. The galaxy would soon learn the true power of human weaponry unleashed. The council chamber exploded into chaos in the wake of Thomas's demonstration. Shouting matches erupted between the delegates as they struggled to process what they had just witnessed. Mizar pounded his fist on the lectern, his voice rising above the din. "This changes nothing. The human weapons will be confiscated and destroyed immediately," he bellowed. He turned to his Romulan guards. "Send word to the fleet. I want every human colony, every settlement, every outpost scoured for these infernal devices. Seize them all and melt them down." Thomas stepped forward, his eyes hard. "That would be unwise, Counselor. Humanity's arms are not limited to Earth. We've learned hard lessons from our past. Our weapons, our factories, our knowledge. They're spread far and wide now, hidden, secret. Any attempt to disarm us by force will be met with resistance, retaliation." Mizar snarled at the human's impudence. He jabbed a finger at Thomas. "You dare threaten us? We have the might of 1,000 worlds, 1,000,000 ships. You think your little caches of guns can stand against the power of the Council?" Thomas met the Romulan's gaze unflinchingly. "I guess we'll find out." Mizar trembled with rage, his purple skin flushing violet. He spun to face the other counselors. The humans have made their intentions clear. They mean to shatter the peace of the galaxy with their barbaric weapons. We must act now to stop this threat before it grows. The Romulan fleet will lead the way. I call on all council races to join us in this righteous cause. We strike at Earth. The response from the other delegates was mixed. Some shouted their assent, others their fears and reservations. But Mizar would not be dissuaded. He stormed out, his guards in tow, already barking orders through his comlink. The alien warships came screaming out of the starry void like avenging gods. Countless vessels from a score of worlds, all united in their purpose to humble the upstart humans. At the center of the armada flew Mizar's flagship, a monstrous Romulan dreadnought, its weapons primed and hungry. But the Council forces were not met by the expected primordial backwater. Earth's orbit swarmed with human ships and stations filled with guns. Missile launches and point defense fire crisscrossed the void. The invaders' initial salvos faltered against a coordinated defense net, humanity's own web of weapons platforms and fortified fleet units. The aliens had come expecting to swat aside a few crude chemical rockets, not match fire with a vast, sophisticated military machine. And at the heart of that machine was Thomas Bell. He stood on the bridge of Earth's mightiest battleship, watching the tactical displays with a cold, assessing gaze. The aliens thought to make an example of Earth. To prove human impotence in the face of Council might, Thomas would show them the error of that arrogance. He had a plan, a bold strike, a way to cut the head off the enemy fleet. Thomas gathered his most elite troops, his most advanced weapons, his most cutting-edge tech. Then he led them out in a small, fast assault craft, racing between the Titanic ships, flitting through the raging battle. Their target, Mizar's flagship. The human boarding craft slammed into the Romulan vessel's hull, punching through armor and energy shields through sheer velocity and dense reactive casing. Thomas was first out the breach, pulse rifle barking, painting the alien corridors red. His space marines fanned out behind him, securing the perimeter, laying down fire as they advanced toward the dreadnought's command deck. Alarms wailed as the Romulan bridge crew scrambled to react to the boarding. Guards rushed forward, disruptor pistols spitting green fire, but the human guns scythed them down in sprays of blood and sparks. Bulkheads dented and deformed as the Marines' armor-piercing slugs punched through, shredding Romulan bodies beyond. The bridge doors exploded inward, and the humans stormed through, Thomas at their head. A burst from his rifle decapitated the last two guardsmen, and then he was face-to-face with Mizar himself. The counselor stood on the central dais, resplendent in his white robes, a force staff glowing in his grip. His yellow eyes burned with hatred and disbelief as he stared down at the human warrior. Weapons snapped up and locked on target, Thomas and Mizar holding each other dead to rights. A frozen tableau of mortality. The human's eyes were cold and hard, his finger steady on the trigger. The Romulans were wide and flickering, darting between the gun muzzle and his enemy's face. "Even if you kill me, human, you've already lost," Mizar hissed. "Our numbers are legion, our technology beyond your comprehension. This is but the first of our fleets. We will drown your wretched species in our dead, bury you beneath our guns and ships until your precious earth is nothing but a glowing ember." Thomas's face remained carved from granite. "You still don't get it, do you, Mizar? Humanity doesn't break. We don't bow. We've faced worse odds than this, seen darker days, and we're still here." His aim never wavered from the alien's skull. Grit, ingenuity, tenacity, the things that let us tame our world, our solar system, that let us claw our way into the stars and carve out our place in this galaxy. When we have to fight with rocks and sticks, we fight with rocks and sticks, and we win. He took a step forward and Mizar flinched back. "But this time, we were ready for you. We have as many guns as you have ships, and a few new tricks besides." Thomas's eyes flicked to the view screens, the flashing red runes of the damage reports. The Dreadnought's weapons were offline, its shields down, its engines losing power. All across the human fleet, elite cyber warfare teams had activated their prepositioned logic bombs. The Council ship systems were subverted, corrupted from within. The malware deployed by Thomas's troops was even now racing through the Romulan networks, the last piece of the digital trap. "Last chance, Counselor," Thomas growled. "Stand down your ships. Come to the table. Or I decorate this room with your brains and we do this the hard way." Mizar seethed, his face twisted in a mask of hate. The Force staff trembled in his grip as he warred with his fury, his desperate need to lash out at this human, this barbarian who had defied and humiliated him. But the fight was lost, and he knew it. His ship was crippled, his guards dead, human guns at his throat and in his mind. To press the battle now was suicide. "Enough!" he spat. His staff clattered to the deck. "You win this round, human. I will negotiate." Thomas nodded, a grim ghost of a smile touching his lips. He keyed his comm. "This is Bell. Cease fire, all units. I say again, cease fire. The Council has agreed to talks." But even as the shooting stopped, as Mizar spoke with grudging deference about a formal truce, Thomas could see the cold calculation in the alien's eyes. This wasn't over. The Counselor had more angles to play, more knives to slip between humanity's ribs. Peace, Thomas knew, was simply the prelude to the next war. Thomas Bell eyed Mizar warily as the Romulan extended an olive branch. "Very well, Counselor. We'll meet at Neutral Station Alpha to hash this out." As his shuttle docked, Thomas discreetly tapped a small device on his wrist. A beacon, hidden from alien sensors, began transmitting their coordinates to cloaked human ships lurking in nearby systems, just in case. The moment they stepped onto the station, Romulan guards separated Thomas from his security team. Red flags went up immediately. "This way, human," a guard grunted, prodding Thomas with his disruptor rifle. They marched him down sterile corridors to an isolated chamber. The doors hissed open to reveal Mizar standing alone with a predatory grin. "Ah, Thomas, so good of you to join us," the Romulan purred. Thomas tensed, muscles coiled to spring. "Where's my team, Mizar?" "Oh, they're indisposed, but don't worry about them. Worry about yourself." Mizar's eyes glinted with malice as he raised a disruptor. "Did you really think I'd negotiate? No, you'll die here, an example to your meddlesome species." Time slowed. Thomas exploded into action before Mizar could fire. His hand shot out, striking the Romulan's wrist. The disruptor clattered to the floor. Thomas's other fist smashed into Mizar's throat. As the Counselor stumbled back choking, Thomas spun and dropped low. His legs swept the feet out from under the two guards. They toppled, weapons flying from their grasp. Thomas snatched up a fallen disruptor and opened fire. Green bolts lanced out, catching one guard in the chest as he tried to rise. The other managed to trigger an alarm before Thomas's second shot silenced him. Alarms blared. Romulan voices shouted in the corridors. Thomas sprinted for the door, disruptor at the ready. He burst into the hallway as a squad of Romulans rounded the corner. Thomas didn't hesitate. He unleashed a barrage of emerald energy, exploiting gaps in their armor. 3 Romulans fell before they could return fire. Thomas ducked back as disruptor bolts seared past. He poked out, snapping off precise shots. 1, 2, 3 more Romulans down. He charged forward, vaulting over the fallen aliens. More Romulans poured in from side passages. Thomas's stolen disruptor sang, cutting them down with ruthless efficiency. Rounding a corner, he came face to face with Mizar. The counselor gripped one of Thomas's security team, a disruptor jammed against the man's head. "Enough!" Mizar snarled. "Surrender now, or watch your men die!" Thomas's eyes narrowed, weapon trained on Mizar. "Let them go. This is between us." "Oh no, human, you started this war. Now you'll watch as I finish it." Before Mizar could act, space outside the viewports lit up. A massive human battle fleet dropped out of warp, surrounding the station. Mizar's eyes went wide, his hostage forgotten. He lurched for a control panel. Self-destruct sequence, authorization Mizar. Thomas's disruptor flashed. The panel erupted in a shower of sparks. "It's over, Mizar," Thomas growled. "Call off your goons and surrender, now." Mizar's shoulders slumped in defeat. With trembling hands, he released Thomas's men and dropped his weapon. "This isn't the end," the Romulan hissed. Thomas allowed himself a grim smile. "You're right. It's a new beginning. For humanity as a galactic power, and you're going to help make it happen." Thomas Bell stepped off the shuttle onto Earth soil, greeted by thunderous applause and cheering crowds. Banners waved, proclaiming, "Hero of Humanity" and "Bell for President." He waved, forcing a smile, but his mind raced with the challenges ahead. The victory parade was barely over when alarms blared across Earth's defense network. Long-range sensors detected a massive council fleet mobilizing. Thomas rushed to the war room, where grim-faced generals huddled around holographic displays. "They're coming in force this time," Admiral Chen said. "Every ship they can muster." Thomas nodded. "Then we hit them first, hard and fast." He gathered Earth's top minds, military strategists, scientists, hackers. For days they worked, fueled by coffee and desperation. Finally, a plan emerged. "We can't match their numbers," Thomas explained, "so we go for their supply lines, cut off their ability to wage war." Stealth ships slipped past council patrols, carrying elite squads armed with cutting-edge weapons. Thomas led the first strike himself, infiltrating a massive Centauri shipyard. Creeping through shadowy corridors, his team planted antimatter charges on vital systems. As they extracted, the charges detonated. The shipyard erupted in a silent blossom of destruction, visible from light years away. Similar strikes crippled council infrastructure across a dozen systems. Weapons factories exploded. Resource processors went dark. Supply depots vanished in atomic fire. On the council homeworld, Mizar raged at tactical displays showing red icons of disabled facilities. "How are they striking everywhere at once?" he snarled. "Find them. Crush them." He redeployed the invasion fleet, scattering capital ships to defend key targets. But the human raiders were ghosts, striking and vanishing before the lumbering dreadnoughts could respond. Thomas saw the council's desperation and laid his trap. He led a brazen attack on a fuel depot near the Horsehead Nebula, then fled into the roiling gas clouds when Mizar's flagship gave chase. Inside the nebula, visibility dropped to 0. Energy weapons diffused uselessly in the charged particles, but Thomas's ships were ready, their hulls hardened against radiation, their munitions optimized for this hellish environment. "All ships, execute attack pattern Omega," Thomas ordered. Human vessels surged from hidden positions. Armor-piercing rounds punched through alien hulls. Antimatter warheads ignited, their blast amplified by the volatile nebula gases. Explosions rippled across Mizar's command ship. Thomas led a boarding team through the breach, fighting deck by deck to the bridge. They found Mizar there, defiant to the last. "You've lost, Counselor," Thomas said, leveling his weapon. "Order your forces to stand down." Mizar sneered. Humanity will never be our equal. Have it your way. Thomas nodded to a technician who hacked into the ship's comms. Broadcast on all frequencies. Thomas's voice echoed across every council channel. This is Thomas Bell of Earth. Your fleet is destroyed. Your leader is captured. Any ship that continues hostilities will be annihilated. Throw down your arms and prepare to be boarded. One by one, alien vessels powered down weapons and went dark. The great invasion had been crushed before it began. Thomas turned back to Mizar. Now let's discuss the terms of your surrender. Thomas turned to Mizar, ready to discuss terms of surrender, when he noticed a glint in the Romulan's eyes. In a flash, Mizar's hand darted to a hidden panel on his wrist. You think you've won? Mizar snarled. I'll see your world burn before I surrender. A high-pitched whine filled the air. Alarms blared across the ship. Thomas lunged forward, grabbing Mizar's arm. What have you done? Mizar laughed, a sound devoid of mirth. Insurance policy, an antimatter warhead in the reactor core. Either I rule Earth, or no one does. Thomas's blood ran cold. He slammed Mizar against the bulkhead. Disarm it, now! Instead of complying, Mizar headbutted Thomas, breaking free. The two grappled fiercely, trading blows. Thomas fought with desperate intensity, knowing billions of lives hung in the balance. As they struggled, Mizar's elbow struck a control panel. A red light flashed, accompanied by an ominous countdown. 5 minutes to detonation, an emotionless computer voice announced. Thomas redoubled his efforts, raining punches on Mizar. The Romulan blocked and countered, but Thomas's fury was unstoppable. A vicious uppercut sent Mizar sprawling. Panting, Thomas raced to the nearest console. His fingers flew over the controls, searching for a way to disarm the warhead. Nothing. The countdown continued its merciless advance. A groan from behind. Mizar stirred, barely conscious. Thomas's mind raced. There was only one option left. He initiated the emergency jettison sequence for the ship's reactor core. Alarms wailed as the computer confirmed his command. Warning, reactor ejection in progress. All personnel evacuate immediately. Thomas hauled Mizar to his feet, dragging the semi-conscious Romulan toward the escape pods. He shoved Mizar into the nearest one, then paused. If he stayed, he might find a way to disarm the warhead, but the risk was too great. Earth couldn't lose its best defender now. Thomas climbed in after Mizar, sealing the hatch. The pod ejected with a violent lurch. Through the viewport, Thomas watched the reactor module separate from the ship, its warp drive engaged, carrying the antimatter warhead away at impossible speed. Seconds later, a blinding flash lit up the stars. The shockwave buffeted their tiny craft, but they were far enough away to survive. Earth was safe. But as reports trickled in over the following days, Thomas realized the cost of victory. The antimatter explosion had devastated nearby systems. Entire colonies, human and alien alike, were gone in an instant. When his pod finally docked with an Earth station, Thomas stepped out to thunderous applause. But the adulation felt hollow. He'd saved humanity, yes. But at what price? As the dust settled, Thomas found himself thrust into a leadership role. The Galactic Council was in shambles, its fleets reduced to scrap. Someone had to step up and forge a new path forward. Thomas stood before the newly formed Earth Congress, outlining his vision for the future. "We've won our freedom," he said. "Now we must use it wisely. We'll build a new galactic order based on cooperation, not conquest. But make no mistake, there are those who still see us as a threat. Our wars aren't over. They've only just begun." He gazed out at the sea of faces, human and alien alike. Some looked at him with hope, others with suspicion. The road ahead would be arduous and taxing, but humanity had proven its worth among the stars. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Thomas knew they would face them head-on.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.